Everyone, and welcome back as I continue to take a look at my selection of Doctor Who stories on DVD. I'm not going to go into great detail of the storyline because it's just general observation, what I thought of the story. So here we are with William Hartnell's second story. Yes, we know this is it. This is the big one. This is where it all begins. And this is the one that introduces us to the Daleks. Now, just to give a brief breakdown of my opinion, I think we're looking at like two storylines here. The first four episodes basically deal with the backstory to a certain degree of the Daleks, the Thals, and it's a race against time for the Doctor and his companions who need vital drugs to cure them of radiation poisoning, which these drugs are given to them by the Thals, because Susan makes contact with them. And the Daleks, of course, want to wipe out the Thals, and they use Susan as bait. That's basically the first four episodes, you could say. The final three episodes basically deal with Doctor and Co. They need to get the Mercury link back because it's been left behind in the Dalek city, and it's obviously the final showdown between the Thals and the Daleks with the help of the Doctor. So there you go. That's how I look at this 7-part story. It's you get one storyline and then you get another. So let's crack on with my general observations. Once again, the Doctor is being very curious. They arrive on this dead planet. Everybody else is not really that interested. But he's interested because he sees this mysterious city. And he goes out of his way to remove the Mercury link from the TARDIS. Wow. That's going to land you in a lot of trouble, Doctor, and that's exactly what happens. Okay, they're in the city now, and of course this is where the episode 1 ends, episode 1 or 2, I can't remember, with that famous scene. Yeah, we all know what it is. It's Barbara pinned up against the wall, looking at something in absolute fear. Absolute fear, no doubt about it. It's a great cliffhanger for its time, and we all know what that thing is, don't we? Because it reveals itself to be the Daleks. The Daleks tell their version of the events that have taken place, and it's a bit of an intrigue to the Doctor, but obviously he hasn't been given full info. These Daleks are definitely early version Daleks, because these ones can only run on static electricity, which the Doctor and Co. discover is their weakness. They cannot leave the city. It's a general weakness in them. And when they're held captive, there's a good scene where Barbara is talking about them, and she's wondering, is there something living inside that Dalek machine? Well, we do discover, in fact, there is something when they capture one of the Daleks and remove its host and use the Dalek machine to escape, with obviously Ian inside. There's a lot going on, obviously. What is interesting about this, the Daleks use Susan to contact the Thals to lead them into this trap. Doctor and Co. eventually escape to the surface of the city, and the Doctor is once again, I'm not really interested. Let's go back to the TARDIS. Hang on. Pardon? The Thals are about to get exterminated here. Anyway, it's Ian who intervenes and basically stops the massacre, and they all escape back to the forest, where the Thals fill in their part of the history of events of the past. And one thing I noticed in their interpretation Dalek ancestors were called dolls. That's interesting. So we get the whole picture. Basically, the Foals and Daleks have been at war for a very long time. And this is now hundreds of thousands of years later. So we're now at the point of the second part of the story. The Daleks have got their hands on the Foals drug because they think they need it themselves, but it turns out they don't need it because the Daleks thrive on radiation. I love the scene where they expose one of the Daleks to the drug, and it just goes completely berserk. It's quite funny, that scene, in some ways, seeing a Dalek die. So, yes, once the Daleks discover this fact, they plan to do something else, because they can't leave the city, so they plan to release massive amounts of radiation into the atmosphere to kill off the Foals. So the Foals have to act, and that's when the Doctor obviously helps them out, and the plan goes into effect for the final showdown with the Daleks. There's an interesting scene involving the group of Foals with the Doctor outside the front of the city, and he gets up to the city, finds this device which controls their static electricity, destroys it and whatnot, and is captured. And it's the scene where he's sitting on the floor, and I think he's surrounded by 3 or 4 Daleks, and the Daleks tell him what they're going to do, and he is outraged. He says, "That is murder." And the Daleks just turn around, "No, it's extermination." I just like that. That is so great. But what follows next? The raising of the plungers by all the Daleks. Yes, I think we all know where that salute comes from. Yes, so there we go. Anyway, the upshot is by the end of the story, we get the final confrontation between the Daleks and Foals. The fight scene is, well, it is rather weak, which is a bit of a letdown for the end of the story. But I suppose you've got to take into account when this story was made, and back then I would assume that fight scenes and violence were, that's a bit too much for that time frame when this story was made. So, okay, I'll accept it. It's a bit weak, but I'll accept it. So overall, it's a good story. It's not bad. It introduces us, obviously, to the Daleks, to the Foals, to the planet Skyro, which is obviously mentioned. It's just a bit too long. I feel 7 episodes was a bit too much for this particular story. I think it could have been 5 episodes, much better, I think, definitely with 5. But apart from that, it was a good story, no doubt about it. And on that note, have a great day. See you in due course on the next one. Goodbye.